From customer service to content creation, education to entertainment, artificial intelligence, it's really reshaping the way businesses and individuals harness the power of AI. But with great power comes great responsibility. How do we ensure ethical usage and address concerns around AI and some biases that might be out there, as well as privacy? How do we use this technology to become better business people and better leaders? Today, join us as we navigate these important considerations and shed light on the responsible deployment of AI. Well, Champion Forum Nation, I am very excited. We put out a poll recently about AI, specifically about ChatGPT, and many of you had a lot of interest around the subject. I realize that many of our listeners, you fall into a host of different categories, from Jeff, what is AI? I don't even know what you're talking about, never heard of ChatGPT, to those that have kind of dabbled a little bit, but maybe you're interested in learning more. Well, look no further. I have an amazing guest with us today that I want to introduce to you. His name's Anand Butani. He is a tech wizard, and he seamlessly merges software engineering and product management. He has over 5 years of AI expertise. He's crafted enterprise-level products for forecasting, segmentation, prediction, and generation. As a beta user of GPT-3 since 2020, he's mastered advanced ChatGPT use cases, including embedding and vector databases. He's helped very large corporations implement it and built dozens of applications implementing GPT technology. You can find him on LinkedIn and Twitter, which will be in the show notes. But I want to start by thanking you, Anand, for joining us with this ever-changing, fast-moving technology that can benefit a lot of us. So thanks for investing some time.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Jeff. Appreciate you inviting me. Great.
Absolutely. You know, we talked offline a little bit about your journey into this technology and some of the very large corporations that you've worked with. So you've kind of been on the forefront of this journey, and you've got to experience a lot of things, not only as a consultant, but also with some of the startups that you're doing. So tell us a little bit. I guess a good start would be, tell us a little bit about your expertise in the field of AI and ChatGPT. Give us a little background to how you got involved and became the expert that you are.
Definitely. So I started back when all these new inventions around machine learning had come about. It was around 2017, 2018, where, they're starting to invent the GPT technology. They're starting to invent things like long short-term memory models. And this is sort of like the early precursors to GPT. I started using those because I was curious in building AI-powered chatbots. So that way, my whole inspiration was to build patient education chatbots. So that way patients could go and ask any question. And so that's what sent me down this whole journey of figuring out how all this stuff works. And, lo and behold, luckily I invested all the time in as GPT and all this new modern era AI comes out. I had a great start, great understanding of how it operates, how the models work, and how to use them properly and most effectively. I've always kept up with the latest innovations coming from OpenAI. So from GPT-2, which no one's ever used, to GPT-3, which most of us have heard of. I've kept up with the trends and installed them on my computer and played around with them. So
simple as that, right? I mean, I'm not going to speak for our audience, but just knowing the audience that I work with, we have executive masterminds and leadership development groups and so forth, and the subject comes up a lot. And I would venture to say that a lot of our listeners are not technology experts. Again, some of them, they don't even know what AI is, and surely they don't know what ChatGPT is. And we have others that, they've been implementing it, but maybe they want to learn more. So we have listeners all over the spectrum. Can you give us an overview of how ChatGPT works?
Yeah, ChatGPT, I guess at the highest level has basically taken a huge corpus of data, basically all the text you can think of on the internet and put it into, let's call it a database. And so that way it can be intelligently queried and respond back to answers. I'm oversimplifying it, but so now you can ask it any sort of question, because it works off, in the simplest terms, probabilities. So if you ask it a question, what is AI? It'll look through its entire database and see what people have responded in the past and look for the highest probability match and give you an answer of, this is AI, this is how it works, and it gives you that response. So that tool, if you take it and extrapolate that a little bit further, you can ask it any sort of question you want, because it's been indexed with, billions of data points. So you can tell it to prepare a marketing plan, a sequence of emails that you want to send out in your marketing sequences or series. You can also have it draft up sales letters that you want to send out to potential clients. There's a million uses around marketing and sales. Those are just scratching the surface. We can go even deeper, but yeah, I want to make sure I keep it at the highest level, and we can maybe dig deeper as we go forward.
Yeah, because one of the things I definitely want our audience to understand is how can they use it on their journey, as they lead other people, as they drive business success as an entrepreneur or as an executive. And it is amazing, the technology. I have used it. I'm not an expert with prompts. I'm very, very elementary. But I remember when I first started using ChatGPT, somebody had told me about it. It might even have been you, Brad. I'm not sure. I think it was. And so I started messing around with it. And one day, you'll love this, Anand, because you know the technology. I'm like, I want to really know how smart this thing is. And so I asked it the question, and the question was, can you write me a poem about Jeff Hancher? And this thing begins collecting data, and it writes a poem that was eerily defined of who I am. And it talked about leadership and motivation and the will to succeed, all in poem format. And I was a little freaked out, but it was so amazing. And so I've listened to other business leaders and thought leaders around how they use this. But let's talk a little bit about ChatGPT. We talked a little bit about how it works, how it pulls data. How is it compared to other AI models that you've seen?
So a lot of the ones that you're going to encounter that have the large applicability that ChatGPT do, they all work off the same technology, GPT. So if you go to Google's Bard, which is the new competitor, or if you go through Anthropic's Claude, they all work the same. They were all worked on these pre-trained transformers, as they call them. And so they're going to essentially take the same, sets of data and train them. Of course, all of them take a little bit of a different pathway in cleaning the data and plugging it in. So they won't be exactly trained on the same data, but they should start eventually having very similar outputs. Quality may differ. The range of functionalities can differ. Like ChatGPT can produce code better than Google's Bard can at the moment. I'm not saying that Google has a lot of resources, so they may catch up over time. So I
Gotcha.
would say that's how they stack up on the GPT technology. So that's on the text generation side. There's a lot of different AI coming out, for image and video generation. There's ones coming out for cam generation, so you can, synthesize full 3D models of rocket engines or car battery engines, all this stuff. So, the use cases are almost endless right now. We're just starting to scratch the surface of all this stuff, and it's going to speed up because AI is kind of a force multiplier in this whole effort.
Well, and I think that's where some of the concern comes about. I mean, we've seen the sci-fi movies and all of this, and robots running the earth. And I'm not downplaying that. I mean, I think it's a real possibility in all of this, but some people are like completely turned off because of maybe not even where it's at, but where it's going. Which I'd like to touch on that in a little bit, but I want to continue laying this foundation. When you think of our audience, and I mean, you got multiple industries, many leaders representing different industries. What industries are using ChatGPT? Is it specific? Are some more conducive to using it? What are you seeing out there? What industries could use this technology?
The simple answer is that every industry can benefit from this. Every profession can benefit from this. I've helped my friends who are physicians use it for responding back to insurance queries, helping them draft better responses to their patients. I've helped manufacturing companies build go-to-market strategies. I've worked at larger enterprises which have used it to help train and speed up their junior software developers and data scientists. So the use cases are almost endless. It's limited to our own creativity of, hey, will I go ask this question and will I do the right prompting to get to the response I want? Because sometimes when you prompt it at the first go, you may not get the right answer. So you have to try a few different prompts, maybe do subsequent prompting until you get to the right answer. So it's about just being creative with what you write in those prompts and how you kind of position the prompts as well.
So where does this I mean, thinking about that, basically what you said is the uses are endless.
Mhm.
This obviously, the people that get ahead of this early are going to have an unfair advantage. But at some point, everybody at some point is going to catch on to this technology.
Sure.
Where is it then that the human element still remains a significant competitive advantage? I mean, now we have, I mean, this is like, we thought Google was changing the game, right? A Google search. We thought that was changing the game. This is literally like, I've heard stories, Anon, of people like writing full books, like from start to finish, writing a full book on said subject, publishing it, pushing it out. We talked about marketing plans. I have clients that are using it to write up legal contracts. I have somebody, my legal team personally said, Jeff, you got to be very careful with this, because just because all this data is being pulled doesn't mean that it's all right. So where do you sit on this? Like, where are the watch outs? Where are the concerns or the risks, or the user that's listening? What are some guards that you would put up with this? And what's the line that we don't cross?
So there's a whole realm just being developed around AI ethics, and I think it's been kind of maturing over the last few years. Uh, it's a tough and very nuanced area, because there's so many areas it can go into. Is it going to remove someone's job? And the short answer might be no, it's not going to be it for the time being, because it's more so going to replace the person who doesn't implement AI immediately versus the person who does implement AI is going to take that person's job, because they're going to be more productive, they're going to be more efficient, they're going to be able to have higher output, and the productivity just overall just goes up.
It's so
So,
true.
so
Go
that's the
ahead.
person that's going to benefit. So you're not going to lose jobs to essentially an AI, but you're going to lose jobs to people who are powered by AI.
Mhm.
And I think that's going to build into the next piece of it, which is I don't think humans will ever be out of the equation, because AI is never going to have enough context for the whole scenario of, let's say, running a business or running a marketing department or a sales department. You still need essentially a human quarterback to operate these AIs.
Yeah.
We're a long way from it being completely autonomous and just running by itself, or as they call it, AGI. So we're a long way. So I don't think people have anything to fear just yet. Um, and I think it's more about adopting it and implementing and figuring out ways to use it, and getting sort of the edge as a business professional from it.
That's kind of where I'm at. And maybe I don't have all the data and I'm wrong, but that's kind of where I'm at with it as well. For me, I think one of the big watch outs is that we lean so heavily on technology that we lose sight of the soft skills, especially as leaders. We need to be situational leaders. There's this human element. There's this emotional intelligence piece that we can't lose sight of. We can't just let this take over how we run our companies, how we lead our people. However, it can create a significant leadership and business advantage. And again, you've worked with some very large organizations, and saw many uses even in your own startup. What are some potential use cases for ChatGPT?
Yeah, so I'll start off with my startup experience, and then we can kind of grow into the enterprise experience. So as of recently, I launched a company called Syllabi.io, and from that, I've had experiences using ChatGPT from the ground up. I want to build a full company using AI at every angle. So this included everything from me and my business partners negotiating our bylaws and partnership agreements. We had ChatGPT pulled up, and we'd revise clauses together. And as we'd be negotiating with our vendors, we had it pulled up, and we'd be able to rewrite clauses in different ways. We'd have it analyze a contract and tell us, hey, what are the highest risks of this contract? And it would tell us, point by point, here are concerns that you should look out for, and here are ways that you could revise the clause to negate those risks. And so those were some of the early steps. And then as we kept growing, we had to build marketing plans. So we feed it a little bit of data about who our audience is, the channels we want to use, the resources that we're going to put into it, the personnel that we have, and that's everything that we put into the prompt, and it would spit out a 30-day plan for us. And of course, we'd revise it in certain ways, saying, hey, no, we don't want to put as much emphasis in Twitter over LinkedIn, and it would revise the plan. So we'd be able to have a secondary prompt revise that. And then as we're hiring engineers or other marketing professionals, it's able to spit out JD job descriptions for us.
Hmm.
And so that way we didn't have to go through the thinking process or, fine tuning anything. We just were able to get the output from it and put it up into job boards like LinkedIn, Upwork, and all these different areas and find applicants for ourselves. And then as we engage consultants, we're able to have a complete plan laid out. So that way, every basically minute that the consultant's working for us is properly utilized, and there's no wasted effort or time. And the consultants really respected us for that, because they actually called us one of the most prepared clients that they've had. And so we've used it from the start of the business all the way to our growth stage right now, because we've achieved quite a bit of growth, and now we need to modernize and basically grow the business to another level. And so it's helping us reach that growth stage in different ways too.
That's fascinating. So you can put, you had mentioned negotiating a contract. So you could put a prompt in ChatGPT that says, tell me where I'm most vulnerable with this contract, and then paste the contract into the question, the prompt.
Yeah, so you have to have a special version of ChatGPT which can process the longer contracts. Um, you know, Most of the common versions that people have, which is ChatGPT Plus or regular ChatGPT, you'll have to do it clause by clause and just ask it to analyze it and tell you, what are the risks of this. There's a new version coming out, which is sort of in beta, which is a 32,000 token one, which you can put in a 20-page contract and it'll analyze the whole thing for you. And so that's what we've been doing, is spitting it through and telling them what our business is. And here are the risks that we want to avoid. And so it'll tell us where our, areas of concern should be within the contract. So,
Fascinating. That is fascinating to me. And I'm just thinking about contract negotiations. You had mentioned job descriptions, which obviously my company, we help a lot of companies with this. There's a good, better, best version of a job description and why people would answer to your job posting and so forth. I mean, here's all the data right at your fingertips of, literally the startup world, the entrepreneur that really doesn't know where they're going or what they're doing. Maybe you're in business and you need to create a performance review, annual performance review, or you need to negotiate a salary increase. Like, man, I mean, it's just limitless to what's in there. Now, Google had that in some way, shape, or form, where you could Google, what does a good job description look like? And then you get 50 million answers and you're like, I'm looking for a needle in a haystack, where this kind of spits out the best data. Is that safe to say?
yeah, I would say it's based on the prompting again. So if you put the right prompt in, it will give you uh, probably one of the better answers versus compared to going on Google and searching things.
Yeah.
Because I think we've all become accustomed to going on Google and finding bad search results,
Mhm.
and going through websites that just overwhelm you with ads. When you're looking for the proper job description, you'll get hit with a bunch of pop-ups and all these things that kind of waste your time, and you're kind of scared that it's going to put spyware or bloatware
Yeah.
on your computer. And so you want to avoid them. So ChatGPT does kind of shortcut a lot of those headaches for you as a business owner. You're able to just get straight to the answer and move on.
Yeah, yeah. So hopefully we have some listeners right now and on that they're like, okay, I'm intrigued. Um, uh, I think I'm going to check this thing out. What would you say to that person? What should they know before they start using this technology, before they start using Chat GPT? What are some foundational things that they should know before they start using it?
So the foundational things I first kind of point out is definitely pay for the upgrade. It costs $20 a month, so you get ChatGPT Plus, and so it will speed up how quickly it produces responses for you. I think it's a nominal fee for how much value it produces for you as a business owner or any sort of professional. After that, I would go and learn the basics of prompting, and they're not too complicated. You can probably look up a few articles. Nowadays on LinkedIn and Twitter, they're flooded with just people posting their examples or templates of prompts. But essentially, you want to tell GPT, something of the nature of who it's supposed to act as. So let's say I am creating an onboarding document. So you'll tell ChatGPT, you are a experienced HR professional, you are working with the marketing department, and you're building a series of onboarding documents for a startup that has less than 10 employees. And if you're that descriptive, it'll spit out a series of outlines that you should produce for onboarding document. And then if you like the outline, then you can ask it to produce each document for you.
Hmm.
So I would say, tell it who it should be, tell it what task it needs to complete, and then, what criteria points you want it to match. And so it'll do its best job to help you create those series of documents and supporting bits of information, like I just mentioned, in onboarding documentation or marketing or sales. Um, just as
Mhm.
much information as you can provide in the prompt, the better it's going to do.
So let's talk about that. If the word prompt is new to somebody listening, what is a prompt? And you kind of explained this a little bit, but what is a prompt and how do I create the best prompts? Do the prompts always have to be in question form? Is it good to have a question and a follow-up question? Is it good to create a scenario, very much so like you just said? So what is a prompt? And how do I, the user, create the best prompts? What are some best practices?
Sure. So for prompt engineering, as they call it, it's a new sort of profession that's developing in the industry. I would say trial and error is the best way for anyone to just get started with it. Just go in, input it, you'll see what kind of answer comes out. If it doesn't end up meeting your expectations, raise it a new way. If I'm trying to produce a piece of code as an engineer, I'll ask it, I need a, Python function that does XYZ. And if it doesn't do it that way, I'll say, produce this function that does XYZ, but also doesn't do ABC. You keep adding things, trial and error, and you'll be able to add more bits and pieces to the prompt until you get the right output.
Mhm.
And so trial and error is a really good way to do it, um, because prompting is essentially a set of instructions you're giving this AI to produce an output for you. Another clever way of learning is just going on Google and then looking up the top 10 prompts or top 100 prompts for XYZ position.
Hmm.
As a sales rep, what are the top 100 prompts I should use?
Wow.
And so that might be a easy hack for someone to use to find out, what other people are using in their profession or their industry. And you'll be able to learn from those and then start building your own unique set of prompts as well. And when you find some good ones, you could save them, and because you may come back to them and reuse them. ChatGPT, if you're on the paid version, it also keeps a history. And so you can refer back to your previous conversations and your previous prompts, to pull back from them, revise them, reuse them, whatever you might want to do with them.
So there's another good question is what are some of the most significant differences between the free version and the pro version? One, you can archive your prompts and responses to prompts. What are some other things? Because it sounds to me like you're all in on the pro side of it. Now, is there like a gold, silver, bronze? Um, what is some of the significant differences that you get with pro?
So with it, you're going to get access to what they call ChatGPT 3.5 Turbo, which is the really fast version of it. And then you also get access to GPT-4, which is a larger data source. And so it can answer questions better. You can add more instructions to a prompt, so it'll have way better output. So for most people, it may be fine to just use 3.5 Turbo and they'll get away with most of their use cases. For me, as a software engineer, I may want to put more complex instructions. So that's where GPT-4 really comes in. So those would be two of the models you get access to. Additionally, they've enabled things like browser extensions and plugins. And so what browser extension lets you do is it accesses the internet and gets the most up-to-date information, because previously ChatGPT was indexed on older information. So I believe it went to September 2021, if I'm not mistaken, and it had only information up to that point. So anything afterwards, it didn't really have recollection of or history of. So it wouldn't be able to pull in the latest information. Now with the paid version, you're able to connect it to the internet and get the latest information.
That just happened
Additionally,
to me, actually.
has it?
Yeah, that just happened to me, and it was 2021.
Yeah, yeah, it won't
And
be able to tell you, who won, the championship games or the playoffs last year. So now it can, it's able to pull from the internet. And additionally, you can plug in websites. So, you can put in some blog article you're reading or some PDF you're reading, and you can plug that in and ask it to summarize that for you. And it'll go ahead and do that for you on the paid version. Additionally, yeah, I know you're about to ask a question.
well, yeah, on that, so this 2021 thing where it's like I only have information up to 2021. Is
Yeah.
that the case for every prompt with the free version?
So every model, so there's models that you can use, and so yeah, every model has basically a cutoff date. They will probably update it sometime in the future, but right now everything goes up to 2021. GPT 3.5 or GPT-4, they both are cut off at a certain time.
Wow. Because one of the questions I was going to ask you was, how does this allow us to be predictive? Because I've heard conversations about AI being used for stock trading. And, where's the best place in the United States to launch this company or whatever. And if that information only goes up to 2021 or whatever, you're not getting the information you need to make a decision today. Because business changes fast, trends change fast, the economy, inflation, interest rates, all this changes so fast. And so if you didn't have that version, you're probably missing out on some very important information.
Yeah, I agree. You're gonna miss out on, definitely, if you're trying to use it for stock trading, you're not gonna have the latest information. But on the older models, it may get certain things that don't change as frequently, such as real estate markets. It'll predict them a little bit more accurately because those move in slower cycles. And so if you ask it where is the best place to buy real estate, since it last updated model, probably things haven't changed drastically. There might be one or two sectors that really changed, but outside of that, it's going to tell you California has XYZ growth. This one, it's going to stay pretty steady.
Yeah.
And I think the stock market example is really interesting to me because there's multiple ways to use it. You could tell it, is XYZ stock worth buying, or you could actually have GPT output some sort of formula to, analyze the PE ratios and whatever, out of the stock portfolio that you're trying to, predict and buy from. And so it can pull all that data from you and it can produce a formula that you may be able to use to evaluate your purchases. So that's a good way to look at it. I don't know if it'll, exactly analyze a stock for you with the current data until you upgrade to the paid version and it's able to browse the actual page and the current, stock market prices and market caps and the PE ratios, all these good nuances of trading a stock. But
Yeah.
I'd say stock trading is a little bit of a nuanced game with that. And I would say read up on it if you're going to use it for it and trust the information that it gives you.
Yeah.
I'm a long buy and hold type of person, so I don't do much day trading. So probably won't be the best person to ask questions about that.
Yeah.
Or index funds and plain and safe.
This is I don't know if you've ever seen the movie. I mean, you're from California. Maybe you've seen the movie Moneyball. Have you seen this with the the guy that used data for the Oakland A's, I think it was the A's, how he used data to determine like what pitches to throw and all of this stuff. I'm just thinking like this whole thing could change sports, could change it could change so many things, like how we go to market with things. I don't know how much data is there. I can only pull from the data that it has, but literally a game changer. And it's almost like if you don't at least get knowledgeable of what's out there, you could quickly get left behind. I would say at best, you would have a significant lack of a competitive advantage because people are using this. And speaking of competitive advantages, again, you've worked with some very notable, everybody would know type large companies. How
Mhm.
can businesses implement this? Like, can you give us some practical applications that you've seen firsthand that you have helped organizations with? What are some practical uses to the listener that's scratching their head and saying, how can I apply this to me and where I'm at? Can you give us some examples of that?
Sure. So from the large corporation example, one of the cases you might be if you're a manufacturing company, for example, is that you can have a series of assortments, meaning you have a lot of different products you're manufacturing, and you may want to figure out what's a right series of products I should produce for next year. So that's a question you could ask ChatGPT. I'm an XYZ corporation. I manufacture these sorts of products. I'm trying to plan out my next year's product line. I need to build a machine learning model that helps me evaluate my sales, my supply chain, and XYZ data points to build an assortment planner. And so that's one use case that you could plug into it, and it'll give you a
Wow.
plan, and then it'll tell you what kind of machine learning models to implement so it can do things like forecasting, supply chain optimizations, assortment catalog optimizations, and help you build for next year in the most efficient way possible. You can also plug in all the data that you have and just take the Excel sheets or the database columns, give a little bit of definition for each one, and plug that into GPT, and it'll tell you how to analyze the data too. So act as a data scientist for you as well. So I know those are maybe high level. Happy to drill into them a little bit more. Uh,
Yeah, I mean, I'm even thinking like from you talked about business planning, a business plan.
mhm.
If you are a startup or you're aspiring to launch, the business plan. Now, does this technology get market specific? Like here I am in Pittsburgh. Could I give it prompts that's like specific to the geography that I'm in?
Yeah, I think if it's a big enough geography, I think it does get it right. I think it's one of those trial and error things. I've always found it to get the information or get a majority of the information correct. So it's trial and error. It may get 80% of what you want there, and then you have to go and do some legwork by yourself. But that's nominal compared to how much it saved you.
Yeah.
So I would say, yeah, trial and error is again the area that you have to dive into and test out if the business plan that you're trying to generate works out for the geography and the demographics you're trying to work out for, and if it gets it correct. I'm assuming it will get a lot of it on point for you.
And so we talked about demographic. You gave a very good example of some prompts as far as business planning. Can you plug in your specific numbers? Like, let's just say that you were breaking down your income statement and you said, our net income is this and our sales revenue is this, and we want to get our net profit to this. Here's our current product line. Like, can you get very granular into your specific numbers, or does the intelligence only look after general type things?
So with the newer model of GPT-4, it does a lot better if you plug in your numbers and you ask it to do calculations with your numbers. It will do a lot better, or it'll give you a good formula that you can use. Calculations, one area that I would say once you start getting into more complex calculations, that it does sometimes make mistakes. So definitely double check the numbers that it outputs, but usually the formulas that it produces are a bit more accurate. So like everything else in the world, double check your work that it puts out. But yeah, you can plug in your numbers and it will produce a business plan. If you're telling it how much budget you have and you want to allocate it between these different expenses like marketing, sales, HR, and everything, it'll do a pretty good job of bucketing them into each of the categories and telling you how much you should spend, and breaking it down, where you might be spending it for marketing, such as PPC costs, email marketing costs, and what softwares you're going to have to subscribe to. It'll do a good job of outlining those pieces for you. So, and it'll catch a lot of things that you may have not thought of either. Like, oh,
Wow.
I have to buy this service with my email marketing thing to, clean up the email database. So that way, any emails that have gone extinct, it'll clean out so I don't send them there and activate some spam filter or something.
That is fascinating. I mean, it literally puts business at your fingertips. There's a statistic out there. I can't remember the exact number, but I think it was 88%. Something like 88% of all new business launches fail within the first year. I'm sitting here wondering, like, probably a lot of the reasons why businesses fail is because they don't really understand business. They have a good product, they have a great service, they have all of these things, but they don't know how to run a business. This could fill in so many of those gaps. The same thing, we talked about writing a book. It's like, I have this idea for a book. I think a lot of people could benefit from my story, but I don't know how to get my thoughts into a format of writing a book or a publication or a blog or, whatever it might be. It can help you fill the gaps that maybe you're not an expert in, which I think is just fascinating. It could also create a lot of plagiarism and a lot of fakes out there, that they don't really have. They're not really that smart, but they know somebody that is. But look, we were doing this with Google as well. So delivery is always going to be paramount. Anand, if I'm listening today and I want to learn more, or maybe I'm an executive leader, maybe I'm an entrepreneur, and I'm like, this is intriguing. I could think that of the people in my company that could benefit from this. How do we train ourselves or our employees to use this technology? How do we get better at it, just like anything else?
Sure. So I would probably borrow from a tactic that we're using at Syllabi. We have weekly sessions where we gather all the employees, our designers, our coders, our marketers, our salespeople, us as the founders, and we all share the different ChatGPT use cases, the prompts that we're using, the outputs. And so that way you're doing a little bit of collaborating and you're being able to learn from the business context specifically, because going to learn from other people, you'll maybe pick up some tricks here and there, but being able to learn from your peers is probably a lot stronger because now they're able to learn from each other. For example, my engineers will learn from each other. Hey, you use this to create something called unit test, so it tests the code that you just wrote. And that was a kind of an inspiration for another engineer to start doing that and spend less time having produced his own manually written unit test. Now he just plugs it into ChatGPT, saving us at least 5 to 10 hours per week of effort. And he learned that from one of these calls. So I think
Mhm.
having these sorts of sessions internally is probably the fastest way to get your team ramped up. Obviously, you're going to have a catalyst. Someone's going to have to be sort of the expert and guide the conversation at first. And then the team will sort of pick it up and it'll continue without that leader having to always push the conversation. And it becomes a weekly reoccurring thing for the team to learn from. And they kind of get excited because they want to share as well and they want to
Mhm.
learn as well. So I think those are the methods I would probably push the most for. You can of course go watch YouTube videos and read articles out there, but I think this is the most productive way I've found.
Yeah, we started doing that as well. And I host an executive mastermind, and these are people that work on the business, not in the business for the most part. But there have been a couple sessions where we took the first few minutes of the session and said, hey, who recently had a breakthrough with Chat GPT, and how did it help? And we just brainstorm and we share ideas. And this has triggered like the light bulb to go off for some of these other executives of, oh my gosh, I had no idea. I wouldn't have even thought of that. And now I think it is kind of learning through that, which I think is great advice. Now, if I'm listening and I'm like, all right, I mean, we probably have people that at the end of this episode, they're going to just Google Chat GPT. Like, if I want to get going and I want to try this out, is that literally what I'm doing? Am I Googling Chat GPT? I mean, there's a sign in, a login, and so forth? Like, take us through that process.
Yeah, I mean, you can Google ChatGPT or just go to chat.openai.com and sign up for an account. You can do a sign on through Google if you have a Google account, or you can sign up with your email. And I think that's the only way you can really get going is sign up through there and start playing around with it. It's the quickest and easiest way to do it is just experimenting by yourself. You know, while prompt engineering sounds like a intimidating name, it's not that scary to actually start doing. Once you start playing around with it, I personally believe that prompt engineering is one of the easiest things to get a hold of, especially as you have your own business, knowledge. You'll figure out how to adapt your prompts and make them more specific to your business and what data to plug in. So a lot of it's just going to come back to trial and error. Everyone I've spoken to that I've initially taught ChatGPT, they've came back to me and said like, hey, I tried this, I tried that, and then I finally got to my solution. So that's what I observed is that it took them a few attempts and then they got the right prompt or they got the right approach to it. So you kind of learn how the model behaves and how the AI behaves from just experiencing it and testing it out.
And I think that's really good advice, is just get in there like anything else. I mean, I remember when, Google, I mean, I'm older than the internet, Anand. So like, I remember even back when that launched, everybody was freaked out. Like, oh my gosh, this is going to ruin society, and man as we know it is going to go extinct. And then came Google, and now here we are with this. And I'm not making fun of people that feel that way. Like, the risks are obvious, and we got to watch, how far we go with this. But to the person that is saying, man, I'm scared to death, I don't know if I want them to have my information. What are the risks? Are there privacy risks? Are there things that we should be aware of? How are they tracking us? Are there safeguards that people should be aware of or put into place to safeguard themselves?
So yeah, there's a few key things they should take into consideration. So ChatGPT has a privacy filter. So if you go to the settings, you can turn it off so it doesn't log any of your chats and reuse them. So that's one key thing that you have to be observant of, because if you don't turn off that switch, it will use your information to train its future models, which is, in my perspective, it's a good thing because you want it to learn from your use cases and be able to produce a better output. So for most of my prompts, I let it log my data because I know what's going in. I wanted to learn from it and train it. But now when I'm plugging in sensitive data, like my what my database looks like or my company's numbers, I turn off that feature. So it's not logging any of that. And I'm able to still use ChatGPT and get the response I want. So I think you have to be very careful with how you put in sensitive information into it, because it does get logged and it can get reused. And if you're going into the corporate level, I think then you have to be very cautious and maybe not even trust that the privacy filters will be there and protect you completely, because it's like anything on the internet. Once you put it out there, it's out there.
Yeah.
So you have to be a little careful. Maybe plug in false numbers as fillers, as placeholders, and then replace them yourself. So that's one tactic that I use at the enterprise level. So that way nothing sensitive is ever released. That way we get the output, we get the formulas, and then we're able to go in and just replace out the actual numbers.
Great advice, because I think that could be a deterrent for a lot of people. So knowing how to navigate that. I mean, I remember we had our mutual friend Austin Armstrong on, and we talked about the privacy of TikTok. And I remember I told a friend I was on TikTok, and he's like, Jeff, you got to get out of there right now. He's like, that's a Chinese-based company and they're watching your every move. And my response was, I'm not that interesting. Like, I don't even know what they would be watching. Like, I literally could have a camera run around with me all day and people would probably just be like, okay, like another dude. But I mean, look, the information is being tracked. There are safeguards in place. I think it's worth exploring, especially if you are a leader, especially if you plan to be a thought leader, and especially if you're an entrepreneur, because there are some significant advantages. But Anand, as we wrap up, look, technology is moving fast. It's changing daily. As we wrap up this segment, what do you see as the future of AI language models like ChatGPT? Any insights, any predictions? What should we be looking for?
I think you're just going to have to look for bigger models that have more capabilities. I think for me as a software engineer and data scientist, right now it's able to produce bits and pieces of code, but not a whole piece of software. I think future models as they get larger will be able to complete full tasks. And so you'll be able to put in more complex instructions and have larger outputs. One of the things with ChatGPT is that its output is limited to what they call tokens, which is it goes up to 32,000 tokens, or roughly, I think it's 20 pages of words. Future models will be able to do, 100,000 tokens or 200,000 tokens. And so it'll just get larger in the terms of outputs that it can do. In your book example, right now it can't produce the book all in one go. You have to produce it chapter by chapter. Future versions can produce the whole book or a series of books. And so I think that's what you should look out for with the GPT technology. I think the other AIs are a whole different conversation, image generation, video generation. I think that's a whole nother, topic that we can get into on another day.
Yeah. Well, look, technology moves fast enough that maybe we'll have you back on in 6 months to get an update on how far things have gone in just a short amount of time, and keep our community updated and abreast of all the rapidly changing technology is out there. Any other things that we should have talked about, or that I should have asked you, Anand, that I didn't, that you, whether it's for the novice that's hearing about this for the first time or the casual user, is there anything else that we should be discussing that we didn't?
No, I think we actually went through it pretty thoroughly for someone just getting started with ChatGPT. I'm going to repeat it again. Just get in there, go through a trial and error phase. Don't be turned off by the first output it does. Reprompt it if you need to, till you get to the right output that you need, the right response and the right result. Because a lot of people will first prompt it and say like, no, I can't use this. It's not a good output. But then that's where you do your prompt engineering and you adjust it. And so if you go do that, you'll get to the right answers that you want over time through trial and error.
Fascinating technology. It is unbelievable. The applications that I've used it for, and listen, if you're a listener, I've gone on record. Technology and me are like 10, I have 10 thumbs of technology. I just learned how to copy and paste. I'm just kidding, but pretty close. I'm using this. And so if you're listening and you're intimidated by this, I'm using this almost every single day at this point. As a consultant, I want to make sure that I'm giving good information to clients. What is the best information? And here's the thing, in my opinion, this doesn't take away from your life experiences. Like, I'm not going out to my clients and just copying and pasting something and giving it to them from ChatGPT. I have real world experiences. I've touched the stove. I've done it wrong. I know what works. I have a pretty good knack for the human element, but I take this information and I combine it with who I am. And what it does is it allows me to serve my customers better. And so I think let's not lose sight of that, listener, that this is just a way to enhance what you're already doing well. Anand, any last comments? How can we find you? Are you open to communication? So on and so forth.
Definitely, always happy to answer any questions anyone has about AI, ChatGPT, or startups. You can find me at Anand Butani on LinkedIn or Twitter. Pretty easy to find, so search me, and feel free to add me or follow me on Twitter, and just send me a message if you have any specific questions. Always happy to help.
Man, you are a wealth of information. Looking forward to following your journey. Listener, by all means, give him a follow. We will have all of his contact information in our show notes. So go give him a follow on LinkedIn, on Twitter. You can learn from his content, and obviously he opened it up. I guess careful what you ask for, because you may get a lot of questions coming your way. But nonetheless, again, thank you for investing time. We'll be sure to check back in with you as the technology changes, maybe have you back on the show again. Listener, let this challenge you. The whole point of the Champion Forum podcast is to challenge you, to get you thinking differently. Here's another tool. Here's another opportunity. Go check it out and then email us. Let us know. How are you doing with this technology? What do you want to learn more about? If you have questions, or maybe there's a question you have that we didn't answer, make sure you email us at info@jeffhancher.com. go get the show notes as well. We're going to give you application activities. We're going to get you in touch with the guests from this show. You can get those at the homepage of our website, jeffhancher.com. Until next time, keep using the technology that we have. Keep finding resources so that you can become a better leader and business person. And until then, keep turning the pressure into potential.